How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another Emerald City Hockey post-game live presented by Queen and Beer Hall in a game, RJ, and not just because you're coming off of that horrendous, terrible, atrocious, whatever adjective you want to use to describe that game against Utah, not just because they were coming off of that game, but just because you're going into Vegas, you're playing a Golden Knights team that's, potentially looking at gearing up for the postseason and stuff like that. Kraken actually played pretty strong in this one. They had the effort level that we like to see. They did a lot of the stuff that we wanted or have been wanting to see them do. And, you even had your chance at the end there to tie it up, just weren't quite able to get it done. So this is actually a pretty decent game.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when you compare it to that last one, I think the biggest takeaway is that it's a consistent, steady effort for 60 minutes of a game. And I think after the last one, that's really all I needed to see in this one. The bounce at the end doesn't go their way, but they do hang in there against a Golden Knights team that's given them a lot of trouble in the past, especially in Vegas. Their overall record has not been good against them, but it's certainly one of the better looking games they've played in Vegas.
Yes, definitely. Now, before we move on to the comment section, two quick things. One, want to thank everybody who was able to join us for the live game commentary over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey. It was fantastic being able to watch this one with all of you and to be able to go off on all of our tangents and have all of our fun shenanigans that we always have over there. And then, of course, want to mention Queen Anne Beer Hall. And we could talk about the Burger of the Month if you want, RJ, but, doing the live game commentary again, and this is the last time we're going to be able to do that for the Kraken this season. We're going to move on in the subsequent months into watching, NHL playoff games. Now that I'm up here, I want to be able to do some watch parties, maybe not like official watch parties, but some get-togethers at the beer hall to be able to watch some NHL playoff games. And I'm really looking forward to doing that. And again, Queen Anne Beer Hall, Moss Bay Hall, can't think of better places to do that.
Yeah, both locations great for NHL playoff hockey. And I know I've been to plenty of playoff games that have not involved the Kraken, especially at Queen Anne Beer Hall. And it's always a really fun time. Can't wait for you to get the chance to do the same. I know we got to do that together. I'm sure we'll set up a date or two for everyone to go watch a game together.
Yeah, Wing Wednesdays probably. Just
yeah, I think that would be the way to go. It
works best for my schedule. What can I say? But yeah, definitely looking forward to doing that with everybody. Jay kicking us off in chat. At least the last 90 seconds was fun. As close as this game was, RJ, as strong as the Kraken did play, it wasn't the most thrilling game. I think again the amount of tangents and stuff that we kind of went on the live game commentary speaks to that, but it was an all-around solid effort from the Kraken. They were never really caved in the way that they were against Utah. Their shot chart, I talked about that a lot there towards the end of the live game commentary. This is a shot chart that I would love to see from the Kraken every game if possible. Just tons of opportunities in close, in and around the net, in and around the goaltender. Some other ones sprinkled in there a little bit higher up in the slot. I get what Jake's saying as far as, there wasn't a ton of edge of your seat moments in this one until the very end, but it was still a good game from the group.
Yeah, we've talked about losing fun. I wouldn't necessarily put this in that category, but certainly I put in the losing with dignity category. Yes. And I certainly can coming off a last game. That's an important category to have this game be in. And also I think too, the goaltending pretty good on both sides. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of plays that I think, could have generated maybe an extra goal each way, but the goalies played well.
Yeah, no, this was definitely kind of a battle between the goaltenders, which I'm down to see. I like that kind of stuff. And then, speaking to what Jake was talking about with the last 90 seconds and then blue, white flame, also that was close there at the end. It was close. So the Kraken were able to put on that push with the goaltender pulled, RJ. They got the look that they wanted. Brandon Montour just not quite able to get at that loose puck. It was in the crease right there. Aiden Hill's on the other side of the net, just not quite able to get his stick on it. Unfortunately, fanned on the shot. But Kraken were able to get those down low looks that they were waiting for. They waited a long time. They had to be very patient for those to develop, but they were able to get, one extremely great chance in that one that Montour wasn't able to score on, unfortunately. And then another good one that I think it was Capo Caco had there late as well.
Yeah, and I think they were really patient for those looks there at the very end, and that's the thing that you're allowed to do basically when you pull the goalie with that extra time. They took their time, they kind of worked the puck around, and really they didn't face any great chances at the empty net from Vegas. And I know we were talking about when to pull the goalie. Really, their only good chance was under the 2-minute mark. But if they had a better chance earlier, that's what they've been doing all season. And it kind of allows you to wait for chances like that.
Right. Wait for the defense to make a mistake. Wait for your extra man to get open in a dangerous spot and then try to take advantage of it. That's what they were able to do here. It feels weird. Like every team should be able to do that, RJ, but it does feel weird when this group is able to do it sometimes just because we don't see it all that often. But it did feel like that patience and skill was on display there at the end from this group, and it was cool to see that. We got Joey 920 save percentage on the night and Canner's 60th point, and to me, ME, what am I missing there?
And to me, that's a win.
Oh, yes. Okay. Is the period afterwards that threw me.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that is very true, B. Another great night from Joey. We were worried about it too. Kind of the fatigue for Joey. It does look like on that second goal that Joey allows, it did feel like a fatigue goal. We were talking about that. Kind of just misplays it. I think that's just because he's been tired as much as and used as much as he has been. But yeah, it was otherwise a good night. Jared McCann getting a goal, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, and on Joey, I think he really battled in this one. He had a couple early that looked like one of them could have been a fatigue goal as well. We were looking at the way he was moving around in the crease, but he kind of was able to pick himself up and work his way through it. And man, as much as I would love to see him get a rest, we have to talk about how impressive it is what he's doing with this kind of workload. No goalie has started more games, played more games in the last 3 months than Joey Daccord. He is having a top of the NHL level workload, and he's battling through it. And we saw it in this game, the struggles, but the way he's coping with it is really incredible. Speaks to his preparation, his work ethic too.
Oh, definitely. No, it's been really impressive watching him here and this evening and what he was able to do. And yeah, no, I mean, he's legit. Like, you know what I mean? Like this year has just been him proving that, the Kraken are right to trust him, to extend him, and to put, the foreseeable future in his hands.
Yeah.
It's all you'd want to see after the extension at the offseason.
If you're going to bet on a goalie, that's the guy to bet on.
Yeah, exactly. Couple comments here. Zach with the first one. Tank Commander Montour. He did aid the tank. I don't know that was his intention if we were to ask him about it, but yes, not being able to convert on that one. And then Jeremy, the tank rolls on. Good effort at the end at least. And like we talked about, it's all you want.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Tankathon here to see how the tank is rolling on. Kraken now at the 5th best lottery odds right now. And so by points percentage, because that's the thing. Philly still has fewer points than them, but 2 games in hand. So, they're setting themselves up okay for the 4th best spot if they can, lose out or at least just maybe win 1 more instead of 2.
Well, there's only 2 left. So there's only 2 left. We've got St. Louis on Saturday and then LA on Tuesday. And that is it for the season, which is crazy to think about that there's only 2 games left. That's a reasonable 1-1, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so. And if at that point too, at least that you're going to be, you still could pass Pittsburgh and Buffalo on the tiebreaker, but like you're kind of capped as far as how low you could go lottery odds wise if you make sure you don't win both of the games. Yeah.
Christian, the passing seems to be better this season, especially after the trade deadline. And I do agree with that, RJ.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, after the trade deadline, the passing seems to have kind of cleared up a little bit. We don't talk about it as much, which I think is a good sign, right?
Yeah.
We only talk about it usually when it's a negative thing, but I am curious kind of what's behind that. Whether it's the specific players or the coaching staff, the message has kind of finally gotten through. Because look, these guys I think Dan might be the first to tell you, if the passing's not good after 20 games or whatever, that excuse goes out the window that it's like the start of the season, whatever. Why post deadline would it suddenly start to click?
That's what I'm wondering too, because I was thinking along the same lines as you. Is like, well, okay, they've been playing all year in this system, so it's more familiar to them. They can start making those passes more. But again, you should just be making those passes. Actually, that's just the way it should be. Because I don't know that that much changed personnel wise post trade deadline to really make that work. But yeah, it's an interesting one. And shout out to Josh Mahura for pass of the night on that 2-on-1 to John Hayden. If you were with us on the live game commentary, you obviously heard us talk about it plenty, but incredible pass to hit John Hayden just exactly where it needed to be so that John Hayden, could stay full stride, hits him in stride, and then John Hayden's able to receive the pass, settle it, and pick his head up and be able to pick his spot on Aiden Hill there. Wasn't able to convert and get the goal, but still, it was a fantastic pass from Josh Mahura that led us to all thinking, maybe late there in the game, move him up to wing.
In the moment, maybe I wouldn't have had a problem with it, but great pass from Josh Mahura, drawing the defender to himself, making the pass across Hayden's body. It kind of had to be perfect, but it was just such an unlikely 2-on-1 to look as dangerous as it did with those two guys, but it was entertaining to watch.
Yep. Now this seems tailor-made for you, RJ, this next comment, to the point where I almost wonder if this is you in your burner.
I promise I am not Shane O'Wright.
With Shane O'Wright. Same stuff, different day. Roster ain't close to competing.
I kind of agree. I agree with that. Really. And this is kind of the asterisk where I think it is losing with dignity. And don't want to get too negative here, but I think you have to be realistic and look that you gave a good effort. You gave a 60-minute effort. The guys were trying out there and we talked about all of that. And yet they gave it their all. They gave it their best. And it still wasn't good enough to beat a Vegas team without their two best players in the lineup, missing Jack Eichel and Alex Pietrangelo. That is a seriously weakened Vegas Golden Knights team. And you see that too in the two games against Edmonton without McDavid and Draisaitl, how you do drop one of those as well. That just tells you the level of talent on the roster is nowhere near close to where it needs to be. And that's an issue for Ron Francis to solve in the offseason. It's going to be the most important one that needs to get solved in the offseason.
Yeah, no, definitely. Got a couple here from George. I'm just going to read them both together. Moved up to 5 on Tankathon. Boston has NOS in their tank. Monumental collapse over the past 2 months. It has been like one of the stories of the league that I do not think is getting enough play. Just how bad Boston has been.
Yeah, it's really incredible what they've been able to accomplish. And especially today, you look at where they're at right now, losing to the Chicago Blackhawks. Like convincingly losing to the Chicago Blackhawks like they were able to do today. I mean, they are firing on all cylinders. I love the NOS in their tank. That's the best way I've seen it described. But I mean, as far as the Kraken being able to get into that 4 spot, right now it looks like Boston just wants it more.
Yeah.
Way more.
Yeah, in the sense that like it actively seems like they do want it. like the players want it. Lindsay, inches away from overtime and potentially a loser point that could hurt our draft position, but dodged a bullet. Yes, they did. And then Edward just continuing the food talk from earlier. Best post-game snack, go. Jeremy with the popcorn, blue white flame with chips. Russ, I had some pistachios. Pistachios, RJ, those are the best. My favorite nut.
They're all right. Pistachios are okay.
Get out of here. Come on.
They're fine.
They're good. They're good. I like that answer from Russ. Yeah, I don't know. I usually go with like I'll have like a square of dark chocolate after we get done with post game. Usually
nice.
It helps like calm me down, let me go to sleep.
Yeah. It depends on my mood, but I like right now it's just a slice of leftover pizza. Sounds good.
Okay.
Just one slice. I don't have any in the fridge. I don't have like leftover pizza, but it sounds good.
That's a fixable problem. B, I just had a s'mores Oreo and it was pretty solid. That does sound good.
Yeah.
Blue white flame. McNabb saved that game for the Knights. He definitely did. Like he got over there. There was the first opportunity for Brandon Montour, and then McNabb was there.
Yeah. Definitely. And McNabb, he's had a lot of those between his career with the Kings and the Golden Knights, where he's just kind of net front and in that spot to prevent a goal against, bail out his goalie, usually Jonathan Quick. But he's had a lot of those moments in his career.
Yeah, definitely. And then here, huge shout out to the sponsor from Lindsay. I may have spent $100 door dashing food for me and my friend, but it was worth it because I got Queen Anne Beer Hall's Burger of the Month, a giant pretzel, a Polish dog for my friend, and beignets. So at least one win tonight. That does sound like a heck of a win, especially the beignets. That should be the post-game snack.
Yeah, you ordered right. I mean, Lindsay, like MVP award here. I think you got everything right. You got the Burger of the Month, you got the pretzel. Those are the two must, and you have to have something sweet to go with it. I know, Dylan, you tried the beignets.
They're so
last
good.
Watch party.
They're
yeah,
so
you wolfed those. Those did not last very long.
No, they did not. And I had them at the first one too, the first watch party at Queen Anne Beer Hall too. So I knew, and I knew
I didn't even notice because they were gone so fast.
Yeah,
I didn't even see them on your table.
I didn't want to give anybody an opportunity to come steal them.
Hey, that's the right way to approach it. I think if you want them all for yourself, you got to down them quick, and then a Polish dog to top it all off. What
Mhm.
more could you need? Well done,
Eh,
Lindsay.
Yeah, no, that is good stuff right there. Joel asking the question: McCann should demand a trade. Poor guy has been on the power play too, and not to be used during the 6-on-5 WTF. Find another guy on this team that has had a 40-goal season. Um, Curious usage there at the end. I think it was just because of how the timing of things worked out with him being out there that previous shift before they pulled Joey, and so he was just too gassed, I think, and then they never left the zone, so there was never an opportunity to maybe change out one of those guys for him.
Yeah, that would be my guess on Jared McCann, but I am looking it up just to be clear here. So he actually, I don't know, I wonder here because
Was
his
he?
final shift ended with 2:47 to go,
Yeah, you know what?
and
Because he was one
and it
of the
was a
guys down low.
36-second shift. His last here, I'll read you the last four shifts, the length of his last four shifts. Okay,
Yeah,
44 seconds, 29 seconds, 25 seconds, 36 seconds.
yeah,
Something seems up there.
yeah. So maybe there's more going on than that. But I do agree with like Kylie further down. McCann likes it here. Yes, I do think so. Jeremy definitely saying the same thing. McCann loves it here though. Yeah, I definitely think so. As for the power play, I mean, look, power play needs a lot of work. I think there's a lot of issues with the power play. I think him being on power play unit 1 or 2, I don't think makes that big a difference. He's been on the more successful power play unit, the power play unit that has zone time. So I think in that sense he probably prefers being on that unit than being on the like listed one.
Yeah, I think so. And I see Joel also saying the fans love him too. Two separate coaching staffs have been unable to find him a consistent line, though. I think that speaks more to the players around him on the team. And I think there have been times where he's fit well, with Shane Wright and Andre Burakovsky and in those different spots.
Yeah.
Like I think they have found decent spot. Also playing with Jordan Eberle as well. I just think Ebbs is like needed elsewhere at various times in the lineup as well. I really think that says more about the other players on the team than McCann.
I think there's that, and then I really do not want everybody to freak out at this. I think it also says a little bit something about Jared McCann because this has been a consistent thing for him at everywhere he's played, right? Like he very rarely does he have consistent line mates, and part of that is in other spots before he was with the Kraken, he was further down in the lineup, so you're talking more like a third line role. That tends to be a line that gets shuffled around a lot, and especially when he was playing center more often, he was just kind of stuck there, and then guys were going to come in and out. But I do wonder a little bit about, he, if there's something to like he is just a sniper, and so it's one of those where you are just going to be kind of moved around the lineup when you're that guy, like when you're just a plug and play shooter. That you know what I mean? Like there isn't a ton of room there for you to develop that like offensive creativity with somebody beyond that.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you look at Jared McCann too. Like this is really the first year we're not seeing the kind of results that we've expected from him in
Mhm.
Seattle, right? You talk about the two coaching staffs. I mean, you look at last year, like, 29 goals, 62 points, the 40-goal season the year before, like he's still been producing. It's just, I mean, I look at his overall stat page and, he's with Seattle, he's a 14% shooter.
I was just
Who's
going to say
shooting
shooting percentage.
who's
Yeah.
shooting 10.7% this season. And I think it's just kind of a down year from a shooting perspective from him. But looking at the consistency of his shooting throughout his entire career, pretty much once he figured it out, I would just expect that number to bounce back next year.
Yeah, I think so too. No, I definitely agree with that. I would love to see him become more of a volume shooter. I've said it before, I'll say it
Yep.
again. That is one of those things that needs to happen. Lindsay, does Grubauer get one of these last 2 games, or do you think we've already seen him play his final game in a Kraken sweater? I really think he gets the St. Louis game on Saturday.
Agreed. I think
If
he's
he's
going to play
feeling
that
well.
one. Yeah, that's true, of course, because he missed the last game. Couldn't even back up because he was feeling ill with the bug that's going around the team. So, but he was feeling healthy enough to back up tonight. So I think that's a positive step for him. I have to imagine the plan is to get him to that St. Louis game. Give the fans one more chance to see him. Give him one more game at home. I think that'd be kind of good for everybody involved, and give Joey a rest. Most importantly of everything, just let Joey not play one of these games.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it back when we were picking on the deep dive 2 weeks ago, like which games we would kind of give Grubauer down the stretch, and it just makes a lot of sense. Joey gets fan appreciation night, last game of the season, and everything, but you do want to give Grubauer that other game at home, just so everybody can have that moment with him. Tammy, I want whatever Edzo was smoking in the first period when he had that giggling fit. Missed out on that because we were doing the live game commentary, but that sounds fun.
Yeah, he was having a fun time right, whether it's talking about carrots or the other thing. I would only hear little bits because I have it just on really low volume, but there were so many times where I just did a double take. What did Edzo just say?
Yeah, and like Daniel here, I was hoping for way more Bon Jovi references from John and Edzo. Yeah, we had that too also back then, back in the first period. So good stuff. Kylie, well, if we lose these last two, hoping we win at least one, highest we can pick is still 4, as Nashville can't pass us now. So yes, that is what's like. That's where they've kind of settled in. Is
yeah, the highest for the lottery odds. Kraken could still pick number 1, of course, if they do win the lottery. But yeah, as far as odds for the first overall pick, that's going to max out at 9.5% if they lose out and get everything to go their way.
Yep. And then Jake talking about Joey. Joey gets Vezina consideration if he's on a good team. I agree with that. If he's playing like this and has the wins to back it up, I do think that he's able to get himself into those conversations. Not only that, he probably doesn't have games like that Utah game that kind of destroy his save percentage.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot better if you just take out those games where the team just does not show up in front of him. And I think the other teams probably don't supply as many of those games. So I totally agreed he gets Vezina consideration. And he'd be one of those goalies I'd be really scared of facing going into a playoff series. I would love to see the way Joey's playing right now in the context of a playoff series, because, man, that's the stuff that Stanley Cup runs, improbable Stanley Cup runs, are made of.
Yes, it is crazy that his record is 27, now 22-5. 27, 22-5. Like, he's played better than that.
Yeah, he definitely has. And even then, I mean, that's a winning record.
It is a winning record, yes. Yeah, no, it's compared to Grubauer's 7-17-1. It's a big difference. And then Lindsay, why did they not play Cale Fleury and hold on to his RFA rights? He's not ARB eligible, right? So why not keep him around even at AHL level? Am I missing something?
I think when you look at Cale Fleury, he's been in the organization for a long time, and you'd have enough data, I think, if you wanted to kind of make a decision on him one way or the other. If you're bringing him back for next year, this is still puzzling to me, though, because you could always, if you don't want to keep him around, you could always just have him be an RFA and not qualify him too. That's another route that you could go. And so I don't know why they're making the decision right now, essentially not to have the option to keep him. If that's what you want to do. It doesn't really make sense to me from an asset management perspective. I don't see why he couldn't be in the lineup for, just another 3 games at the end of the season. But, maybe it tells me that either they're confident they could get some deal done with him if they want to do it, or it tells me that they're just kind of done with him in the organization. I'm not really sure which it means. I'm interested to ask. I mean, we won't really get to talk to Ron about it right away, but I think I'm going to ask Dan when they come back home just about that decision. And does Ron have input there with how that works? Because it was still puzzling to me.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by it. Again, it just gives, have the option. Usually we'll see teams like want to have that option. It's especially surprising because it really felt like he was Dan's boy. Dan always seemed to want to get him in games, as frequently as he could. So it is an intriguing one. It's a little bit of a head scratcher. Not gonna lie.
Yeah,
not gonna lie. And then Shano Wright saw the tweet about Geeky and Donato goal totals. What do you attribute that to? Just more ice time than current Kraken players get, coaching, etc. I will say, just because I used that opportunity while you were talking to look up the ice time thing, and Ryan Donato is averaging 5 minutes more in Chicago than he was his last season as a Kraken, and Morgan Geeky is getting 5.5 more minutes than he was getting his last season as a Seattle Kraken. So ice time is definitely a part of it, RJ.
Oh, for sure. I think just overall, it's being put in a larger role and also put in a position to succeed as a secondary piece. These guys are not necessarily driving the bus, but they're playing with good players and they're playing big minutes. And hey, they've been able to be valuable pieces in that role. And I think, we saw the promise there when they were playing with the Kraken in a smaller role and of course having less production, but they they were outmatching every fourth line they went against. We remember a couple of years ago, it was just a mismatch. And I think really the best spot for them is probably, somewhere in between those two things, because, they're both on teams that are looking to finish in pretty bad spots at this point. But you look at Morgan Geekie, he's been pretty much attached to the hip with David Pastrnak this season.
Over 650 minutes playing with David Pastrnak will really help out.
I did look that up earlier today. Yeah. So he's played pretty much his entire season with David Pastrnak. And of course that has a lot to do with it, but not everybody, I think, could be a 30 goal scorer, even playing with Pastrnak as much as he has. I think it's still impressive what Geekie's done, and, kind of going to the right areas of the ice. And then Ryan Donato, of course, playing a lot of his time with Connor Bedard, not as much though. Like he's actually,
it's like 150 5-on-5 minutes.
Yeah. So the most common line he's on actually does not involve Connor Bedard. So I think Ryan Donato, but we've seen what he does, right? He lives at the net. He drives the net. He plays a certain way that's going to lead to that kind of production. If you give him those kind of minutes, I think it's the kind of thing that just generates goals at the NHL level. If you can put up with the punishment that you're going to take doing that consistently, but we know he's willing to do that.
Right. Donato's style of game is one that very nicely scales with how much ice time he gets, right? Like the results to ice time line is pretty linear. Morgan Geekie, I think it's more nuanced, but I think that, being with David Pastrnak, who I believe leads the league in 5-on-5 points, as well, like underrated. Obviously everybody thinks about the goal scoring with Pastrnak, but he's at 59 assists. Pasta, like he's an underrated playmaker and just driver of offense as a whole. And so being able to play with him, if you're Morgan Geekie, is certainly going to help out, in addition to just the additional ice time. He's also shooting 21% this year, Morgan Geekie. So, do I think he's a 30 goal scorer every year? Probably not. He's maybe more of like in the 20 to 25 range, but that'll kind of help. I think it's more of a combination of factors there. Whereas, like I said, Ryan Donato just scales with however much ice time you can get him out there for.
Yeah, and it leads to an interesting conversation too, because everyone wants to extrapolate from that, trying to figure out what I'm trying to say with that. Really is like, okay, are you saying the Kraken should have kept them? Are you saying they would be 30 goal scorers on the Kraken? I'm not necessarily saying either of those two things. I don't think they would be 30 goal scorers on the Kraken. They would not be put in positions like that with very good players to succeed and have all that ice time. As far as whether they should have been kept, that's a kind of a more nuanced discussion. And, whether you think they'd be better fits in the Kraken's middle six, than what they have right now. I think you can make a good case for Ryan Donato, at least in particular, especially given what he was, ended up costing. But, it's more complicated than just, well, if you kept both of them, they'd be your two leading scorers with 30 goals each.
Yeah, no, and it is something, because, I asked the question, right? Are we going to get a 25 goal scorer on the Kraken? Jaden Schwartz is at 24, team leader. Jared McCann, Ellie Tolvanen tied at 22 now. Obviously, there's 2 games. It's possible for one of those guys to get there, but it is something. If you can't have a 25 goal scorer on your team in like today's NHL, I do feel like that's pretty telling.
It is, and it's behind a lot of the problems I think we're seeing for the Kraken this year, and it's continued from the previous years. And I do think, if you're gonna not have a 25 goal scorer, you better have some serious scoring depth. And, Donato and Geekie were part of the last time the Kraken really had that.
Yeah. I don't know that there's another team in this league that doesn't have one.
I don't think so, because Schwartz has got to be the lowest scoring leading scorer, right?
The Flyers I went to, it's a tie at 24 right now with Konechny and Michkov. They both have 24.
Okay.
So that they're tied with you right now.
Yeah.
But like Tage Thompson, I know in Buffalo is over that. I got to think somebody in Detroit's over that.
Yeah, I think they've got.
DeBrincat's at 35.
DeBrincat's got a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a tough one. It's one that we talk about star players and stuff. Jordan Kyrie's got 34. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Need some goals.
Yeah. Let's see. We're talking about this stuff there. George, hopefully Boston can win out and we can secure top 4 odds. A big ask though, is they're a complete mess right now. Yeah, I don't think you can count on them at all. Kylie, Brock Besser said he doesn't expect to return to Vancouver. I did see that earlier today. Figure we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow on the Red Glare, but his fit with the Kraken, RJ?
I don't like it. I think some team is going to massively overpay him. Yes, he had 40 goals a year ago, but look at his career. He's more of a 20 to 25 goal scorer, and that's playing with some good players around him, probably better than the Kraken have to offer. So I think he is probably one of the biggest like overpayment bait players that I would look to avoid. Danger with him.
Yeah, he is one of those guys that every year that he has had a large amount of success, he's played with somebody who's kind of like helped him get there. Like he has the skill to be a high skill and top line player, but he can't drive the bus, and so I don't know that he then does too much on the Kraken. That being said, he's got 25 goals this year, so.
Yeah, I mean he at least has that. Although and on the Canucks team where a lot of things have gone wrong, so maybe you could say, yeah, he could probably hit 25 with the Kraken. I bet he could hit 25 with the Kraken, but that doesn't really solve your problem. More guys in that 20 to 25 range,
Yeah,
it doesn't fix things, and especially not given what he's going to cost. The projection from AFP Analytics: 7 years times $9 million. So if that sounds good for another 25 goal scorer, that's great, but doesn't sound good to me.
I was going to say, for a guy who, yes, has the 40 goal season, but not another season over 30. Granted, injuries have played a part in that, but still, that's tough.
$9 million for a guy you optimistically project as a 30 goal scorer.
Yeah,
stay away.
Cap's going up, RJ. That's just the cost of doing business in this upcoming year's NHL.
Yeah, I can hear it already in the presser on July 2nd. Let's go.
It's what it is. This is one, and I do agree, Daniel. Why have we yet to see a McCann, Shane Wright, Jordan Eberle line? Someone needs to ask Disco about this. I was gonna say, I don't think Disco would ever give like if we I don't know that any coach takes kindly to suggestions on lines. But it is curious that we haven't seen them together, given they looked all right at the beginning of the year when that was a thing.
Yeah, they did. And I think really it just comes down to, I mean, McCann's had to play center for a lot of the time after the deadline and kind of slip into those spots. And at this point, I think, they kind of like the whole thing with Burakovsky and really putting him in a position to succeed. And that's, I think, really why we haven't seen it.
Yeah. And then, Shane's just going to be a bottom six forward this year.
That's the plan.
Got 16 minutes, but again, only 18 shifts, and you're in the bottom six. Lindsay, I'll always remember giving Dylan one of my beignets at Queen Anne Beer Hall watch party right before he got called up to speak on stage and had to hold it the whole time. Highlighted that awful Minnesota game. It was brutal, and you know what? It was warm when I got it. It was not warm then when I was able to eat it. It was talk about a tease. Like, it's in my hand. It's not even like, oh, I can see it on the table and I
probably
just need to
smell
get there. I had it in my hand, feeling it go cold. The life leaving the beignet in my hand.
Oh, that is rough. I know, I was right there too. I remember you just wanting to eat that, and I think that's how you had closed that. Like, all right, I'm gonna go eat this beignet.
Yeah, I had to get out of there too. Jake, Dylan, how do you think Isaac Howard would be as a fit for us? I'll also open this up to you, RJ, because I know you looked at him as a potential trade. Not trade target, but somebody that could come back in a trade if the Kraken were to do a deal with Tampa Bay, which they did do. I do like Isaac Howard. I don't know what his offensive ceiling is at the NHL level. Like, I think you're talking about a middle six forward. He kind of adds to what you already have a stockpile of guys that are good, but aren't going to create for you. They're not going to drive possession necessarily. I do think that unlike some of the guys that you have now, he might be able to go to the net front a little bit more frequently. You might be able to play with a little bit more hunger. But I don't know that he's going to be able to truly like up the skill level in the way that this team needs.
Yeah, and I can't speak too much to the player being a good fit or not, just because I haven't watched him enough to really know. I know that's more your forte, Dylan. I will say, from an asset standpoint, he's the type of asset the Kraken should go look to get, right? A prospect who's probably close to being NHL ready, someone who could step up and contribute in the next couple seasons with a first round draft pedigree. That all on paper sounds good to me, but that said, I just don't know, as far as the fit for the player and how much he really helps you and has that high end upside. Because right, if he's another middle six guy, doesn't really help you. You have to believe that he's, really going to be top six.
Right. And he had, he obviously had great numbers this year at Michigan State, but it's his third year playing in the NCAA. Like he's following the trajectory that you'd want him to as a first round pick, but I don't know that you can read like a ton into the numbers that he put up and kind of how that's going to directly translate to the NHL for him. And again, like he's not like a big guy either, so you're not going to be able to like use him as a power forward or something like that. So it's one of those where he gives you what you have, but a lot cheaper. There's that.
That's true. I mean, just the fact, yeah, you got the ELC and all that stuff that could help you, and team control.
Yeah. Stratic, I know the team has had some wins versus Vegas, but I'm still sick of losing to Vegas. There is something about losing to Vegas, the organization, RJ, and the fan base that is awful.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Striatic. I'm sick of it too, but if it's gonna at least, I think, benefit the Kraken in the draft, I can at least look at that, but I am still sick of it being Vegas.
Yeah. Jason wasn't expecting to care so much about Boston versus Chicago this season. No, I don't think any of us did.
Nope, either.
And then Tammy, look how good Joey did in the Winter Classic. Can't wait to see him in a playoff series. Oh, for sure. For sure.
He seems like the kind of guy whose game would elevate when the pressure is on too. I really want to see him there. It'll be a shame if we 5-year contract probably should get to maybe
probably
at least
should.
once.
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. By the way, Joey Winter Classic, why is there not a bobblehead for that?
Yeah, well, because they did the Joey bobblehead earlier this year and it wasn't Winter Classic.
Right. But like, why? There's got to be one for like Winter Classic shutout, right?
You'd think. I mean, here's the thing: have they repeated a player on a bobblehead yet?
I don't know. I was gonna say, like, even if it's not them, like I would think somebody would do it. Like maybe there is a group somewhere that's done it. I'm just saying. I know the bobbleheads they've just been using as like promotional, like just like they're kind of working their way through the roster, which is fine. But also one of the big things that I think of with bobbleheads is commemorating big moments in your franchise's history for your players. And
because they had the McCann hat trick one, right?
Right. And that is the most significant. That's the most significant individual player, moment that this franchise has had.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely is. And so, yeah, you'd think it would be on the list at least for next season, especially given that he's like the number one fan favorite on the team.
Yeah. So I'm just saying. Elbel asking, could Cale Fleury just be sick as well? I mean, that is a possibility.
That's true, and that might explain it too, because you're not, for asset management reasons, you're not going to force a player who's sick into a game.
Mm-mm.
And so that might explain. That's why I'm interested to ask Dan about that, because he might be like, hey, he wasn't necessarily feeling under the weather, and I'd be like, cool, totally get it.
Yep. Lindsay Schwartzy will hit 25 goals against his former team on Saturday. It's very possible. Very possible. And then Bryce, I've watched a lot of Besser as a pre-Kraken Canucks fan. I wouldn't sign him at UFA money. Yeah, I got to think that a lot of Canucks fans would say that, like current Canucks fans would say that as well.
Yeah, I would have to think. Again, he seems so much like the type of player every year that gets the contract that's way too big, that gets overpaid and doesn't deliver production-wise. It's just, he is that guy for me this year.
Yeah. Let's see, Lindsay, should we give Tampa their first round pick back for Isaac Howard, since it sounds like he indicated he doesn't want to play there after our last trade with them? Would you be interested in that from like an asset management standpoint? Do you getting a promising player that you could slot in? He's not going to take up a lot of money on your roster. See how he is at the NHL level, and then he's also just a trade piece. Like, do you think a prospect like Isaac Howard has more value than holding on to their first round pick in 2026?
I think he probably does, because he's a little bit further down the line. He seems to be developing all right. Again, I'd have to know the player himself. I just haven't watched enough of him. Asset management on paper, that's a solid move, I think. Yeah. I don't know that the Lightning would be interested.
I was just going to say, the problem is
situation they're in.
Yeah, if the answer is yes, then the Lightning should, in theory, be able to get something more than a first-round pick back for him.
And I think they will be able to get something more useful than that first-round pick to them for him. I don't think they would take that trade.
Yeah. And then B, unfortunately, and I say this with love because I do like Besser as a player, he really feels like the exact sort of player Ron will be targeting and willing to overpay on. Yep.
I told you I could hear
Here,
the words on July 2nd.
here's the one thing that could save you, or save us, I should say.
Okay. Save me specifically.
If the Kraken are still going to be committed to this whole like play with speed, get up the ice skating style, I don't know that you like totally go after him. If you're looking at landing a $9+ million player in free agency, I don't know why you would say go after Besser instead of say a Nick Ehlers.
Yeah, Ehlers seems like a much better fit for the way Dan Bilesma, kind of wants this team to play. And so I think Ehlers would be a better fit as a free agent signing too than Besser. So, hopefully that's kind of the read. If they're going to go after one of those two, I still think either one of them, if that is kind of marketed as, if that is like the solution, like, hey, we got this guy, that's going to solve things. The rest are just minor tweaks around the edges. That's not going to be good enough. So there's also that problem, but between the two, give me Ehlers over Besser all day.
Yeah, and Ricky, Besser is just Newman at 5x the cost and 7 years older. You're not wrong.
Yeah, I think if Newman keeps kind of progressing this way,
yeah, no, I mean it's one where Newman maybe doesn't get there next year, but yeah, in theory that is the situation. And then B, there's a bobblehead of 3 Kraken players, including Joey, and there's one of them up on eBay for like $300 from the Winter Classic. So then maybe it's because it's an NHL thing. The NHL, certainly has partners for bobbleheads, specialty bobbleheads, third party that aren't going to be from the team. But because I don't remember the team doing Winter Classic bobbleheads.
No, I don't either. I'm trying to look this up right here on eBay to see.
And Kylie saying not doing Winter Classic for Joey's bobblehead was criminal. It was even a game against Montreal.
Yeah. What is the story behind this? I'm seeing this on eBay, and this is not something the Kraken have done.
Well, because remember, so one of the first people that ever worked with us from a sponsor standpoint back in year 1, ECH, was a third party group that did officially licensed bobbleheads. And that first bobblehead was Ryan Donato's first, the first goal in franchise history, commemorative Ryan Donato bobblehead.
So that might be, it might be that. I'm trying to see if it's just
I wonder if they just
brand Forever Collectibles, it says.
Yeah. So I wonder if they just work with third parties.
Oh, that's Foco. That's like them. That is them.
That is them. Yeah.
That is Foco. Yeah. So that's it is them. Yeah.
There we go.
That's a nice looking bobblehead.
Yeah. And be saying it wasn't a giveaway item. I think it was something you could buy as merch, but it was super limited. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. And then Zach, hey, but at least our GM cares about doing right by the players and not giving them all term and no movement clauses. So who really wins between us and Vegas? Sorry for the RJ bait.
Yeah, that is RJ bait, but I'm not going to take the bait. That's bait.
That's bait. Yep. 2 out of 2 Lindsay Zachary Shorts is scoring on Saturday. That's right. Daniel, what do you think about Ehlers or offer sheeting Cooley? Will Cooley.
Will of the Rangers, I believe.
Yeah.
Cuylle.
Yeah. Look, I really like Ehlers. I think Ehlers brings a lot more to this team. He gives you somebody who can create in the offensive zone, can play creatively. I think putting him with a Shane Wright, you'll really know next year if you had the two of them playing together how good Shane Wright can be at the NHL level, just because if he's going to be able to kind of take that next step from a hockey standpoint, play more creatively, be able to do those things in the offensive zone. I think at some point you need a creative player to put with him. And I think Ehlers could be that. But again, it's one of those, like, I just don't know about sinking a ton of term and money to an aging winger.
Yeah, it has to be part of a larger overall plan. Remember, Ehlers is 29, so he's going to even a year older than Besser, 2 years older than the youngest free agents. So, you have to look at the term there as well. I mean, the AFP analytics projection is 6 years times 7.5, which feels a lot more palatable to me, certainly than the Besser number. Like if you could get a 6-year term, I got a feeling Ehlers has got to be able to get a 7-year term, right?
Somebody will give him 7 years, probably.
It'll be unwise, but someone will do it.
I think
as with a lot of these free agent signings.
Right. As with every free agent signing ever. With just like I was talking about with like Mitch Marner, I do think that, again, smarter players tend to age better. They don't drop off the aging curve cliff like players that rely just on, say, their size or their skating ability do. So I do think that it's a little less dangerous. You're probably still getting decent production years 33, 34 out of Nick Ehlers in a way that I don't know you're getting out of Brock Besser, especially with the injuries that Besser has already had in his career. So I will also throw that one in there. But again, it is one where it's a lot of money in term for a winger.
It is. And, that stuff always scares me. Like, again, unrestricted free agency, unless you're getting a true star like a Mitch Marner, it's a sucker's game. It's a minefield all over the place. So, most of these guys are going to be bad options. As for Will Cooley on the offer sheet, I just think he's another, kind of bottom six type depth forward that the Kraken already have like too many of. You're looking at just like another Ellie Tolvanen, and you don't really need that.
No. Let's see. Gru is the only Kraken Funko Pop. I'd love another player from El Bell. Yeah, that's weird, right? That is still only Gru. That's
you'd think there'd be more.
Odd to me. Granted, I don't know how many like rounds or waves of NHL Funko Pops they've bothered releasing in the last couple of years. So I think
I do not follow these things.
That has probably been part of it too. And Blue White Flame asking for Eberle there. That would be a good one. And B, I don't usually like Funko Pops, but any more Kraken player Funko Pops would be a must buy for me. Yeah, I mean, it's one where you're just you'd be printing money. And I believe Funko based in Everett, right? It's somewhere in the region here. Yeah.
Yeah, they're up there in Everett. Yeah.
Yeah. So you would think you'd be able to maybe get something done there. And then Lindsay, if we don't get one of the top 4 spots in the draft, I'm growing more interested in trading back for a Carter Bear, or recently heard us mocked for Mertka as a big right-handed D who already plays in Seattle. All right, so I already had the big Carter Bear conversation in the live game commentary, and I'm planning on having it again on Monday on the deep dive because it's part of the mailbag. But I'm very interested in Carter Bear. I think if the Kraken end up picking like in the 7-8 range, that's prime spot to take him. I think that it's a tough one with his injury, just because I think that's what's really going to hurt him. I think he was flying up draft boards. He really was. And then a playoff run would have done great for him because he's so built for playoff style hockey. I think he would have really cemented himself in that conversation of that tier of guys right outside the top 4. But he suffered an Achilles injury, requires surgery, 9 to 12 months recovery time. It's going to be really interesting to see how teams want to deal with that. I think that, how aggressive they're going to be at drafting him. I think he's just the best player though. So in that like 7-8 range. So I would probably grab him if I was the Kraken there anyway, but it is one where unfortunately he's losing his D+1 season. So you have to worry about like long-term development from that standpoint. But he is great. Mertka, I didn't notice that much great stuff from him watching these last couple, the last couple games of that T-Birds Everett series. I think that it's one where you're looking at the right-hand D, big body, and you're kind of projecting from there, and he's a project, and those are always dice rolls.
Yeah, and I think as far as those two guys, I tend to just trust your evaluations, and so I won't really add anything because I haven't seen enough to really make a good evaluation. But I will say, not to pour cold water on this, but it is incredibly rare that a team will trade up or down within the top 10. That just doesn't happen. The last time that's happened was 2008. So I mean, trading back, it's not really a realistic prospect, just because I think teams beyond that top 4 will not have interest in trading up. They won't give up serious assets to trade up, because why would you? You could get a similar type of prospect or somebody that you like a little bit later. For the same reason that the Kraken would maybe want to trade down, teams wouldn't want to trade up.
Yeah. So I feel like wherever the Kraken are going to be drafting is probably too high for Mertka, just because more project-based guys like that are it's just, you don't generally want to take them in the top 10. Teens is fine, right? Like that's the time to draft those guys that have, maybe higher upside. But that's where I'm at with him.
Yeah. And I mean, I wanted to see more from, I was excited to see him, Mertka, but he just didn't. But again, he's a project. That's the thing. It's like you buy the size and like the general amount of skill, and you think we can work with this guy.
Right. And he had a great season. I mean, he was close to a point per game guy in his first year at the WHL level. Like, that's not nothing. Top 5 on the T-Birds in points. this season, and he only played 43 games. Like, I don't want to sell him short, like, oh, he's like nothing. But when you're talking about NHL teams being like, oh, right-handed shot who's 6'6" here, they're thinking like, you know, the on a very grand scales, and very few times does that end up working out for them. I think the same thing's going to happen with Roger McQueen, and I think that it's one of those where when you draft one of those guys, you got to take them as they are, instead of kind of putting all of those expectations on them to be the like next Zdeno Chara or whatever, right? And that's where you run into issues with like Dallas with Jamie Alexiak forever, where it was just like they were constantly keeping him in the AHL, trying to get him to play a way that he was just not going to play, because that was just the expectation. You see his size, you just think, okay, he should become this. And then he didn't. And it's not to say he's not a good player, but that's just the way things kind of go.
Yeah. And I see, you know, Lindsay, yeah, mostly just trying to beef up our D prospect pool, but definitely looks like a drop off after Schaefer this year. Yeah, it's mostly forwards, I think, worth taking, you know,
Yeah,
all
I mean,
we'll see what you end up having to say about Jackson Smith once you watch him more.
I was just going to say Jackson Smith seems like the one that pretty universally everybody's on as the next guy. And I've seen him kind of making his way up draft boards more into the top 10 and stuff like that. There. And then Joel, as a Thunderbird and Kraken fan, Murtka gives us more size for sure. Nice to see a Thunderbird on the Kraken. I don't know how much sense hockey-wise it would make. And yes, I do think that would be something cool, would be for them to finally have a T-Bird. Like that would definitely be nice.
They've had other former T-Birds, you know, Alex True and whatnot, but to draft a T-Bird would be pretty fun.
Yes, definitely. What are the chances of Decord starting the last 2 games of the season and it being the end of Uru as a Kraken from Kraken Hockey 32? We talked about this earlier. We really think he's going to get the St. Louis game. It makes sense.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he didn't. You know,
yeah,
I had to give it out like 10 to 15%.
Yeah, that he doesn't.
That he doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, again, maybe he's still sick, something like that. But yeah, we really think it's happening. And Daniel, well, we're not getting Marner and we're not getting Pasta. So who are we going to get?
That's
a nice, easy question.
Potentially $10 million question there, Daniel. I really do not know. I mean, you know, Besser would be the, like, of course, you know, who they'd get, but I don't know. I've been thinking about this a lot more too. Ron Francis is going to have to pull a rabbit out of his hat this offseason. He's going to have to do something unlike anything he's ever come close to doing in his career as a GM if he's going to turn this team into a playoff team next year. And it's going to have to be somebody that we're not even talking about right now. That just is not occurring to us. He's going to have to make something like that happen. And so we'll see if he can do it.
Yeah. It's just the way it's going to be. It's going to be an interesting one for sure. Like last year, you know, we had certain expectations and levels of thought around what the offseason kind of needed to be. And then, you know, they made moves, didn't solve anything. But like this year, it's going to be really interesting. Even more so than last year when we were calling like last year, like the put up or shut up offseason. This one feels like it has to be like.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not, I mean, if you go out and you know, bring in Besser and you bring in some big name players and you still finish bottom 5 in the league and everyone is still around after next year, I think you just kind of have to conclude that everyone's going to be around forever and nothing matters. Like,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no, it's true. Joel, trade for Barzal in a heartbeat. Absolutely would. If the Islanders ever trade him.
Yep. Yeah. Trade Barzal, the Islanders, they'll probably tell you no.
Yep. But it's going to happen eventually. Like they have to at some point, RJ,
yeah.
I would think.
I think by then he'll be just like too old so as to not match the window and everything. Already it's kind of pushing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Jake, if Boston implodes enough, maybe Pasta does become available. I think Boston's really planning on being aggressive this offseason and turning things around. They're not going to just be like, well, I guess we're entering our rebuild window now.
No, and with a top 5 pick here, like they're going to be in a position to really bounce back too. With a guy like that on an ELC, they can go for it again. So I don't see that. And even if he does become available, even if they trade Pasta and say we're blowing it up, first of all, Pasta has a full no move clause. He'd have to want to come to Seattle. I don't think he has any particular desire to come to Seattle. I think he's probably got better options. You know,
he's going to a competitive team for sure.
Yeah. So there's layers of it, I think, why it wouldn't work right now.
Yeah, and keep in mind also partly why Boston has been so bad this year is they had some, kind of key injuries to that group so they're going to be getting like Charlie McAvoy back next
Yeah.
season. That's
They
going to help
sabotaged their
them.
own goalie before the year.
Right, right. They sabotaged him very much so. Hampus Lindholm's only played 17 games this season. So like they're going to be better next year kind of regardless of what they do, but I do think that they're going to be aggressive. Let's see, Lindsay. As much as another season of sucking would hurt, I think tanking for Gavin McKenna next season would be faster than being mid for 10 years by overpaying this offseason. Yeah.
You're 100% right, Lindsay. And in a vacuum, in a video game, if you're trying to win a Stanley Cup, that is absolutely the right move to make. You want to kind of get rid of some of the pieces on the edge of this team. As we see, they're already close to being one of the worst teams in the league. Just kind of tear it down a little bit, let the prospects continue to develop, give them some more ice time next season. It could be a real developmental year for everybody. But, and you could compete for Gavin McKenna. If you get him, you're going to be a contender. It just guaranteed you're going to be a contender over the next, 5-6 years. But, it's not in a vacuum. It's not a video game. The organization will not do that. So, it is what it is.
It's going to be interesting, like, because, Jason here, we'd have to out-tank Chicago and San Jose, though.
San Jose is going to take a step.
Yeah, San Jose will definitely take a step forward. I think Chicago is going to have to invest in stuff next season just because they got to keep Bedard progressing and happy. Who do you think is really like in the driver's seat? Like as I'm like kind of looking at it, because like so many of the other teams that were bad this year were able to put up some points. Like, is Nashville really going to be this bad again next year? I don't think so. Like, they're going to be bad, but they're not going to be this bad again. I think Philly is probably like the
Philly
team.
was the team that stood out to me. Maybe Pittsburgh I don't know. If like age just hits Crosby or he gets hurt or something, Pittsburgh absolutely could be.
They would be
in that realm.
Yeah. But otherwise, like even like a Buffalo.
Could you imagine Pittsburgh? I would hate that. You get to the bottom league, you get McKenna. You would love it. You would love it. You have Mario right to Crosby, right to McKenna.
Like 2 years of Crosby teaching McKenna.
F that.
Just saying. Daniel, excited to see Nugnath in Everett on Saturday. Yeah, no, really, really exciting stuff. Hoping that series goes to at least 5 so I can get up there because I can't get up there this weekend.
Yeah. So just hope for not a sweep.
Yeah. Oh, Jake's saying the Islanders too. Yeah, Islanders could definitely be in a spot.
I can't. I mean, like, look, I don't think they're good, but I think if Lou's still there, they're not going to be bottom 5.
That's true. Bo Horvat and Anders Lee
and they've dealt with a lot of like injury stuff this year.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're good, but
and they have a goalie.
They do. They
having a goalie sure helps you not be like terrible. Seattle Kraken.
I say yeah. Yeah.
All right. I think that's gonna do it here for this post game live. Too much Islanders talk here. That's if we have to mention the Islanders twice in 5 minutes, we immediately end the post game. I think that should be a new rule. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for this one. Again, not a bad loss for the Kraken. Just kind of where we're at in this point of the season. Only 2 games left, both home games. Excited to see those. Next up on Saturday against St. Louis again. Hoping we get Groove for that one. I think we will.
I think so too. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Another shout out to the Patreon supporters that we have over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey for being with us for the whole night, really, watching the game with us for the live game commentary. Had a ton of fun with them. And then another huge shout out to Queen Anne Beer Hall for sponsoring. Again, can't wait to do some like playoff watch alongs and stuff there with everybody. And again, don't forget, you don't even have to go to the beer hall to enjoy the beer hall. You can also be like Lindsay and just order the beer hall to you.
Yep. I mean, hey, follow Lindsay's example. She's thinking outside the box, so that great job. Again, clutch ordering, Lindsay. Perfect order too. You could just duplicate that. I wonder if you call it. Yeah. Can you say just like order the Lindsay or whatever? Just like they'll know what you mean. They should have a thing where it's just that's the order. Exactly. So thanks to them for sponsoring like always. And we will see you all next time.